Thomas swallowed, his throat dry. Her eyes, her voice, and the warmth of her arms made him want to drown, to forget everything that was binding him. He knew he shouldn't think like that, shouldn't let his emotions go beyond the limit, but his heart didn't listen. It kept beating erratically as if it wanted to escape from his chest. Thomas's mother called softly again. He felt that every word became meaningless. He just wanted to look at her for a long time, wanted to remember every little detail on her face. His hand, like an unconscious reflex, slowly rose up, gently touching her soft lips. She was a little startled. She felt Thomas's awkwardness, but also his gentleness. Her heart beat strongly, her breathing became rapid. "Thomas! Mom!" She couldn't continue because of the feeling that hand brought, the feeling that all limits had been erased. Welcome to our channel. If you love emotional and engaging love stories, then come to our channel. Here we will bring you stories full of surprises, touching and engaging. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any interesting stories. In today's video, we would like to send you a story called Mrs. Tessa's Indulgence to Her Son-in-Law. Please watch. Tessa is a strong and resilient woman. At 45, she still retains her mature and gentle beauty, with deep eyes and a gentle smile that attracts all eyes. However, beneath that appearance is a soul full of pain and loss. Her husband died suddenly in a car accident when her daughter Olive was only 5 years old. His death left a huge void in the family, and Tessa was forced to brace herself to be a support for her daughter. "Don't cry anymore, my daughter. Your father will always be with us, even if he is far away." Tessa hugged Olive. Her voice choked, but she tried to stay calm. "Why did you leave me, Mom?" Olive sobbed, tears rolling down her chubby cheeks. Tessa didn't know how to answer. She just hugged her daughter tighter, as if to give her a little bit of maternal warmth, as if to fill the emptiness they both were suffering. From then on, she became both father and mother, caring for and raising Olive with all her love and strength. Olive grew up to be a beautiful, gentle, and obedient young woman. She inherited her mother's beauty with big round eyes, smooth white skin, and long shiny hair. Despite lacking the love of her father, thanks to her mother's devoted care, Olive still grew up in love and protection. "Daughter, what beautiful flowers! Did you buy flowers for your mother today?" Mrs. Tessa smiled lightly when she saw Olive carrying a large bouquet of roses back home. "Don't tease me anymore. It's just a gift from a classmate," Olive replied shyly. Her cheeks flushed. "My daughter is so beautiful. Sooner or later there will be many suitors. But remember to choose a good person who loves Tessa and takes care of you. Do you understand?" Mrs. Tessa said, her heart filled with worry for her daughter's future. "Don't worry, Mom. I'll find someone I love and who deserves my love." Olive smiled, hugging her mother tightly. Tessa looked at her daughter with eyes full of love and hope for Tessa. She hoped that Olive would find happiness, something she couldn't fully keep when she lost her beloved husband. One day, Olive introduced Thomas to her mother. Thomas was a tall, handsome young man with a warm smile and determined eyes. He had overcome the hardships of a poor childhood to become a talented engineer. From the first meeting, Mrs. Tessa had a crush on this young man. "Hello, I'm Thomas. Olive and I have known each other for a while. I came to visit you today," Thomas greeted politely. "Hello. I've heard a lot about you from Olive. It's nice to meet you today." Mrs. Tessa smiled warmly. "Yes, I've been looking forward to meeting you for a long time. I hope you will support my relationship with Olive," Thomas said, his eyes sincere. Mrs. Tessa looked deep into Thomas's eyes, as if searching for something. She saw sincerity and determination in those eyes, something she had lost faith in long ago after her husband passed away. "I just want my daughter to be happy. If you really love Tessa, I will support her," Mrs. Tessa said gently. In the following months, Thomas Tessa often came to Olive's house. The three of them cooked, ate, and chatted happily together. Mrs. Tessa gradually considered Thomas as her own son. Their feelings became increasingly close and intimate. Thomas always showed himself to be a mature and trustworthy young man. He not only loved Tessa and Olive, but also cared for his future mother-in-law. "Mom, I think Thomas is a very good person, don't you think so?" Olive asked when the mother and daughter were making tea together in the kitchen. "I think so too, my daughter. Thomas is a good man. I believe you will be happy with him." Mrs. Tessa nodded, her eyes shining with trust. "Today, Thomas said he would propose to me, Mom. I'm so excited." Olive smiled brightly, her cheeks flushed. "Really? So I'm going to have a son-in-law?" Mrs. Tessa laughed loudly, happily looking at her daughter. That evening, Thomas prepared a romantic candle-lit dinner in Olive's small garden. He knelt down and gave her the ring with his eyes filled with love for Tessa Ong. "Olive, I know life will be difficult, but I want us to overcome it all together. Will you marry me?" Thomas said, his voice warm and sincere. "Olive, I do," she said in a choked voice, and then threw herself into Thomas's arms. From afar, Mrs. Tessa stood watching her daughter and future son-in-law with a happy smile. After the wedding, Thomas moved in with Olive's family. Tessa was overjoyed that her daughter had found a husband who loved Tessa and cared for her. She felt lighter than ever when she saw the bright smile on Olive's face every day. "Thomas, are you getting used to living here?" Tessa asked as the family ate dinner together. "Yes, I feel very comfortable with Mom and Olive around. I could not ask for anything more." Thomas smiled in response, his eyes full of love for Tessa Ong as he looked at Olive. "That's good. You must treat Olive well. I entrust my dear daughter to you. Don't make her sad," Mrs. Tessa teased, but her words were somewhat serious. "I promise, Mom. Don't worry." Thomas gently took Olive's hand, squeezing it lightly as a promise. At first, everything went smoothly and happily. Thomas always showed himself to be a good husband, taking care of his wife and mother-in-law. Tessa often helped Tessa fix things around the house and take care of the small garden. The relationship between Thomas and Tessa became increasingly close, not only as mother and son, but also as two close friends. One quiet weekend morning, Thomas woke up earlier than usual to jog around the neighbourhood, both to exercise and to relax his mind with Tessa. When he returned home and stepped into the garden, Thomas stopped, his breathing still steady after his workout. He saw Tessa watering the rose bushes in the garden. Her long black hair fell over her shoulders. The morning sunlight shining on her smooth white skin made her look different. She was wearing a light, comfortable white nightgown. The neckline was slightly low. Every time she bent over, her full breasts appeared. Thomas stopped, his eyes drawn to the image before him. He had never thought that his mother-in-law could exude such a gentle and captivating beauty. Suddenly Mrs. Tessa raised her head, her eyes sparkling with a smile when she saw him. Her gentle voice echoed in the quiet space, waking Thomas from his wandering thoughts. "Thomas, are you home?" "Oh, you woke up early, Mum." He forced a smile, trying to keep his voice natural. "Why didn't you rest more and go to the garden so early?" "I'm used to it. Waking up early feels better. I love looking at the rose garden in the morning, the dew drops still on the petals. It feels so peaceful," said Mrs. Tessa, her eyes filled with love as she looked at the bright red flowers. Thomas followed her gaze, trying not to let his eyes wander anywhere else. "How long have you been taking care of this rose garden? It's beautiful. Every plant is in full bloom." "Since your father passed away. These are the rose bushes that he loved so much. I took care of them for him. Every day when I see these fresh flowers, I always feel like he is by my side," Mrs. Tessa said softly, her eyes filled with sadness. One evening, after Olive had gone to bed early, Tessa and Thomas sat in the living room chatting. Outside, the rain was falling softly, and the wind blew through the cracks in the windows, making the space even more quiet and intimate. "Thomas, have you been under any pressure at work lately? You seem tired." Tessa broke the silence. "Yeah, work's a little stressful, but I'm fine. Being home and talking to Mum and Olive makes me feel much better." Thomas smiled softly, his eyes looking into space as if he were deep in thought. "If you have any problems, just tell me." "I may not be able to help much, but I am willing to listen," said Tessa, her voice warm and sincere. Thomas sighed softly. He turned to look at Mrs. Tessa, his eyes deep and a little sad. "You know, sometimes I feel like I have too many responsibilities. Family, work, and taking care of Olive. I love her, but sometimes I feel tired, like I'm not good enough to support all of them." Tessa listened, her heart sinking as she saw the sadness on Thomas's face. She hugged him, her grip tightening. "Everyone gets tired and weak sometimes, son. I know you're a strong, resilient man. I know Olive is lucky to have you by her side. I'll always support you, Thomas." Thomas clearly felt the warmth radiating from Mrs. Tessa's embrace. Her soft breasts, rising and falling with her breathing, made his body hot. For a long time, except for his wife, this was the first time he had touched someone of the opposite sex, making his heart beat faster than Tessa's. Her soft hand gently patted his back, as if to give more strength and peace to a heart that was wavering in the midst of a stormy life. In that moment, Thomas no longer thought of anyone else, no longer felt the burden of responsibilities weighing on his shoulders. He only felt like a lost child who had found his mother, being protected and comforted. Thomas whispered softly, his voice low, as if wanting to disappear into the quiet space of the evening. He didn't know what to say. He just felt his heart beating faster than Tessa's. This feeling was unlike anything he had ever experienced. Tessa didn't say anything more. She just held him tighter, feeling Thomas's warm breath on her shoulder. She knew she shouldn't have, but the weakness and affection that filled her heart made her unable to let go. Thomas slowly raised his head, his eyes stopping on Tessa's face, the faint wrinkles at the corners of his eyes. Those soft lips and eyes filled with tolerance made him feel his heart flutter in an inexplicable way. He didn't know what was happening in his heart. Perhaps it was admiration, respect. But there was also a small part, very small, of desire. A flutter that he never thought he would have with this woman. "Mum, I really don't know what to do without you," Thomas said, his voice trembling slightly, his eyes stopping on her lips he had never noticed before. They weren't the full lips of a young woman, but they held a tenderness that he felt deep in his soul. "Thomas, don't think too much. I'm always here. I'll always be with you," Mrs. Tessa whispered, her eyes looking at him softly and warmly. She didn't realize that her eyes had become different, full of affection and a bit of weakness, a weakness that she had hidden for so long. Thomas swallowed, his throat dry. Her eyes, her voice, and the warmth of her arms made him want to drown, to forget everything that was binding him. He knew he shouldn't think like that, shouldn't let his emotions go beyond the limit, but his heart didn't listen. It kept beating erratically as if it wanted to escape from his chest. "Mom," Thomas called softly again. He felt that every word was meaningless. He just wanted to look at her for a long time, wanted to remember every little detail on her face. His hand, like an unconscious reflex, slowly rose up, gently touching her soft lips. Tessa was startled. She could feel Thomas's awkwardness and tenderness. Her heart was pounding, her breathing was rapid. "Thomas, She couldn't continue because of the feeling of that hand, the feeling that all boundaries had been erased. Thomas looked deep into her eyes filled with a strong desire that he himself couldn't understand. He wanted to pull her closer, wanted to feel that tenderness clearly, and so it happened. The two of them, in the dark, entangled with each other. There was only their rapid breathing, their moans, and the feeling of Tessa stretching around them. Finally, they reached cloud 9, the ultimate bliss. They lay on the sofa, their bodies limp and without strength. After a moment, the emotions just now disappeared, leaving only panic and shock for Mrs. Tessa. She looked at Thomas, her heart filled with mixed emotions. Thomas, what have we just done, Mrs. Tessa said, her voice lost and trembling, her hands covering her face, as if not wanting to face the truth that was right before her eyes. Thomas blinked as if waking from a dream. His hands pulled back, guilt and fear overwhelming him. He felt like a traitor, an unforgivable criminal. I'm sorry, Mom. I don't know what I'm doing, Thomas stammered. Tessa looked at him, her heart in turmoil. She didn't know what to do, what to say to ease the emotions swirling inside them both, but she knew that if she didn't stop now, things would spiral out of control. No, Thomas, it's not your fault, it's me. I'm at fault too. We let our emotions get the best of us. We shouldn't have. Tessa whispered, her voice breaking. She took another step back, as if to put some distance between them, but her heart was in turmoil. The two stood there facing each other, but neither dared to take another step. The feeling of closeness just now had become strange and filled with apprehension. Mum, I think we should stop here. I don't want to hurt Tessong, Mom, and I don't want to hurt Tessong Olive. I'm so sorry, Thomas said, his eyes red with the struggle inside him. He wanted to hold her again, to tell her that everything would be okay, but he knew he couldn't. Mrs. Tessa nodded, trying to hold back the tears that were about to fall. She knew that if she continued like this, she would not be able to maintain the fragile boundary between emotion and reason. She would lose everything, lose the only daughter she loved, Tessa Ong, lose herself. Thomas, you're right. We can't go on like this. I don't want to hurt Tessa Ong either, and I know if we keep going, everything will fall apart. Mrs. Tessa said, in a choked voice, her eyes tightly closed, as if trying to push away the images that had just happened. Thomas looked at her, his heart filled with pain and regret. I will try to keep my distance, but Mom, I don't want to lose you. I really don't want to lose this relationship. Tessa opened her eyes and looked at him with so much emotion in them. I don't want to lose you either, Thomas, but we have to be strong. I believe we can get through this. The two of them stood there in the dark room, in a suffocating silence. No one dared to move forward. No one dared to say anything more. Mrs. Tessa sighed softly. She turned and walked away, her legs almost giving out from the heavy feeling in her heart. She knew that from this moment on, nothing would ever be the same again. They had crossed a line that they should not have crossed. Thomas watched Tessa's back, his heart filled with regret and pain. He didn't know how to fix this mistake, didn't know how to face his mother-in-law, and especially Olive. His heart felt like it was being squeezed because he knew that some part of him couldn't deny the fact that he was attracted to that woman. Thomas stepped out onto the porch, the coolness of the night waking him up a little. The rain was still falling gently, each drop a reminder of his own silence and solitude. He remembered every moment with Tessa, every smile, every look. Was it all just a delusion on his part, or did she feel the same way he did? No, I can't think like that. Thomas shook his head, trying to clear his thoughts. He couldn't continue to allow himself to slip into this emotional maze. Olive, his wife, the one he'd sworn to love Tessa and protect, was in this house. He couldn't betray her, couldn't destroy the family he'd worked so hard to build. Tessa returned to her room feeling exhausted. She sat down on the bed, her hands covering her face, trying to stop the tears from falling. Her heart was torn by conflicting emotions. She knew she shouldn't let these thoughts exist, but why did her heart not listen every time she saw Thomas? "Thomas, why did it have to be like this?" she whispered, her eyes filling with tears. It had been a long time since she felt her heart flutter like this, not since her husband died. She had promised herself that she would never let another man into her life again. But Thomas was different. The sincerity, the care, and the pain in his eyes had softened her heart. Tessa shivered slightly as she remembered Thomas's gentle touch on her lips. It was a brief moment, but it had woken her from a long dream. She was no longer a mother-in-law, but a woman who was hungry for affection, hungry for Tessa's love. "I can't do this. Thomas is my daughter's husband," Tessa muttered to herself. She knew that if she continued to let these feelings develop, she would lose everything: motherhood, Olive's happiness, and her own peace. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in the house became heavy and awkward. Thomas and Mrs. Tessa tried to keep their distance, avoiding private conversations. Olive did not notice the change. She was still as cheerful as Tessa every day, immersed in work and family happiness that she thought was complete. "Honey, can you come home early today? I want to take the whole family out for dinner. It's been a while since we've been together," Olive said, her eyes shining with joy and anticipation. Thomas was startled. He glanced at Tessa for a moment and forced a smile. "Yeah, I'll try to come home early. I don't think there's much to do today." That night, the three of them sat in a cozy restaurant. Olive kept talking and laughing, talking about work and upcoming plans. Thomas tried to smile and appear cheerful, but his eyes occasionally glanced at Tessa. Both of them could feel the tension between them, but no one dared to say anything. "Husband, are you listening to me?" Olive suddenly spoke, her eyes looking at him curiously. "Huh? Yeah, I heard," Thomas said, startled, trying to force a smile. "I was asking if we could go see your mum this weekend." "It's been a while since we've been home," Olive said, her eyes filled with anticipation. "Oh yeah, sure. I want to go see Mom too." "She'll be happy to see you and Mom too," Thomas said, then turned to look at Tessa. Their eyes met for just a moment, but it was enough to make both of them feel an undercurrent rising inside them. Tessa quickly turned away, her heart beating so fast and hard it felt like it was about to jump out of her chest. "Well, I haven't seen my in-laws in a while. Maybe I should go visit her," Tessa said, trying to keep her voice calm. Dinner passed in a false peace. Thomas and Mrs. Tessa tried to act like normal Tessa people, but deep down they both knew that if this continued, things would soon spiral out of control. That weekend, the three of them went back to Thomas's hometown. His mother, Mrs. Piper, was a gentle, simple woman. She lived alone in a small house in the suburbs, taking care of a small garden with lush green vegetable beds all year round. When she saw Olive and Mrs. Tessa, she was as happy as if she had met long-lost relatives. "Oh, mother-in-law, it's been so long. You've gotten younger and younger. You look like three sisters. Olive, you're back. I'm so happy." Mrs. Piper hugged them both, her eyes filled with emotion. "How are you, Mom? We've been meaning to come visit you for a while now, but I just couldn't find the time." Olive smiled, taking Piper's hand. "Mom is very healthy, still growing vegetables and raising fish like every year, just waiting for her and the children to come home to visit. Come in so I can prepare tea and cakes," Mrs. Piper said happily, and then hurried into the house. Mrs. Tessa stood watching, her heart suddenly filled with an indescribable sadness. Mrs. Piper was a kind and simple woman, and Mrs. Tessa felt extremely guilty when she thought about the feelings she was hiding. In her heart, she had not only betrayed her daughter, but also betrayed this woman's trust. That evening the whole family sat around a warm meal. Mrs. Piper kept asking Mrs. Tessa about life in the city, about her work and her health. Mrs. Tessa tried to appear cheerful, but her mind was in turmoil. "Tessa, you've worked so hard. I really appreciate you taking care of Thomas and Olive. You're a wonderful mother. Olive is so lucky to have you," Piper said, her voice sincere and full of emotion. "It's nothing, sister. Thomas and Olive are both good children. We just want them to be happy." "Thank you for raising such a good son-in-law for me," Mrs. Tessa replied, her eyes looking at Thomas, her gaze filled with so many unspoken thoughts. Thomas also looked at her, his eyes filled with turmoil and confusion. At the small house of Mrs. Piper, Thomas's mother, the atmosphere was as warm and peaceful as ever. Mrs. Piper was a kind and gentle woman. The small house was located in the middle of a lush green garden, surrounded by vegetable beds and flower gardens that she took care of herself. That evening, after a cozy family dinner, Olive was chatting happily with Mrs. Piper in the kitchen. Mrs. Tessa sat quietly on an old wooden chair, her eyes gazing into the small garden in front of her.